Have you ever been so certain you were doing the right thing that you couldn't see how wrong you actually were? I thought celebrating our faith publicly was an act of devotion, but I had no idea that God was about to shatter everything I believed and show me the truth in the most shocking way possible. My name is Tariq. I'm 28 years old from Brooklyn, New York, and on April 15th, 2023, I organized what I thought was a peaceful Ramadan celebration that would honor Allah and demonstrate the beauty of Islam to our neighborhood. Instead, that day became the catalyst for the most incredible transformation of my entire life. I was born and raised in Brooklyn to Palestinian immigrant parents who came to America in the 1990s. My father, Ibrahim, owned a small grocery store in Bay Ridge, and my mother, Yasmin, worked as a teacher's aide at the local Islamic school. From my earliest memories, our home was filled with the call to prayer and the unwavering belief that Islam was the only true path to paradise. My parents made sure I stayed firmly rooted in Islamic tradition. I attended the Islamic Center of Bay Ridge every Friday, went to weekend Arabic classes, and participated in every community event. While other kids my age were exploring American culture freely, I was being carefully shaped into a devoted Muslim. By age 16, I had memorized over 30 chapters of the Quran. The Imam would often ask me to lead prayers for the youth group, and my parents beamed with pride whenever community members praised my dedication. I wasn't just a cultural Muslim. I was deeply committed to every aspect of Islamic practice. My identity was inseparable from my faith. I graduated from Brooklyn College in 2018 and helped my father expand his grocery store into a small chain. By 2022, we had 3 locations across Brooklyn, all certified halal. Business was good, my family was proud, and I was engaged to Amina, the daughter of another prominent family at our mosque. Everything was proceeding according to plan. My entire identity was wrapped up in my religious community's approval. I measured my worth by how perfectly I could follow Islamic law and how well I represented Islam to the world. I genuinely believed that my perfect observance was earning me favor with Allah and securing my place in paradise. In early 2023, I became more involved in community activism. The Imam talked about how Muslims needed to be more visible in American society, that to show our neighbors that Islam was a religion of peace. I started looking for opportunities to demonstrate Islamic faith publicly in our neighborhood. Bay Ridge has a large Muslim population, but it's also home to many Christians, including Our Lady of Angels Catholic Church on 4th Avenue. The church had been there since 1911, a beautiful stone building with stained glass windows that caught the afternoon sun. Every Sunday, I would see Catholics gathering for services, and I felt a mixture of pity and superiority watching them worship what I believed was a corrupted version of God's truth. In my mind, they had strayed from the pure monotheism that Islam represented. In March in 2023, as Ramadan approached, I had what I thought was an inspired idea. What if we organized a public iftar celebration right outside the Catholic Church? Not to be confrontational, but to show the beauty of Islamic tradition and maybe even invite some Christians to learn about Ramadan. I presented the idea to the Imam and community leaders, and they enthusiastically supported it. They saw it as an opportunity to assert our presence and demonstrate that Muslims were a permanent part of the neighborhood fabric. We planned the event for April 15th. The idea was to set up tables on the public sidewalk directly in front of Our Lady of Angels around sunset. We would have traditional foods, prayer rugs for public prayer, and informational materials about Islam. In my mind, this was dawah, sharing the message of Islam with our neighbors. Looking back, I can see the problems with what we were planning, but at the time, I was completely blind. I never considered how it might feel to the Catholics to have Muslims taking over the space in front of their church. I never thought about asking permission or coordinating with Father Michael. I was so convinced of the righteousness of our cause that I couldn't see it from any other perspective. The day arrived with perfect spring weather. About 50 Muslims from our community gathered with folding tables, food, prayer rugs, and banners. We set up directly on the sidewalk in front of the church's main entrance around 5 p.m. The mood was festive and celebratory. Children ran around excitedly, and the air filled with the aroma of traditional foods we had prepared. The first sign of problems came around 5:30 p.m. when Catholics began arriving for their 6 p.m. Mass. They had to navigate around our tables to reach the entrance. I could see confusion and frustration on many faces. Some elderly parishioners struggled to get past our setup, and several asked politely if we could move to create a clearer path. I responded that we were on a public sidewalk and had every right to be there, my voice carrying an edge of defiance. Father Michael came out around 5:45 p.m. and approached me. He was an older man with kind eyes that immediately made me defensive. He asked if we had considered holding our celebration in the park where there would be more space and less disruption. I told him firmly that we had chosen this location to be visible and that we weren't doing anything illegal. I understand, Father Michael said calmly, his voice patient despite the obvious disruption. But your celebration is making it very difficult for our elderly and disabled parishioners to enter the church for Mass. Could we work together to find a solution? I rejected his suggestion immediately. Muslims have been marginalized in this country for too long, I told him. We have every right to celebrate our faith publicly. I'm now ashamed of how arrogantly I spoke to this kind man, but at that moment I felt like I was standing up for Islamic rights against Christian oppression, completely missing how I was the one being oppressive. Father Michael nodded sadly and returned to the church. By 6 p.m., our celebration was in full swing. Our speaker system broadcast the call to prayer loudly, competing with the church bells. Several men laid out prayer rugs directly in front of the entrance and began praying, effectively blocking the main doorway. Catholics trying to enter for Mass had to wait or use a side entrance. I could see anger and hurt on their faces, but I interpreted it as religious intolerance. Some younger Muslims were actually laughing about how uncomfortable the Christians looked, as if we were winning some kind of victory. Then something unexpected happened. As we were breaking our fast, I noticed an elderly woman struggling through our crowd toward the church. She was using a walker and having difficulty navigating our tables. Several people from our group were blocking her path, absorbed in their conversations, not even noticing her struggle. I watched as her walker caught on a table leg, causing her to stumble. She didn't fall, but she was clearly shaken. Father Michael rushed out to help her, gently guiding her to the side entrance, his arm supporting her frail frame. The tenderness with which he helped her struck something deep within me. For the first time that evening, I felt a twinge of guilt, but I quickly pushed it aside, convincing myself that her difficulty was not our responsibility. The evening continued with growing tension. Catholics began taking photos and videos of our setup. A few made comments about Muslims being disrespectful. This only reinforced my belief that we were facing discrimination and needed to stand our ground. Around 7 p.m., as our meal was winding down, something extraordinary happened. Father Michael came out followed by about a dozen parishioners carrying large containers of food. They walked toward our group and my instinct was defensive. I braced myself for confrontation, but Father Michael approached me with a warm smile and said, "We understand you're celebrating Ramadan, and we want to welcome you to the neighborhood properly. We brought some food from our church community dinner to share with you." I stood speechless as these Catholics, whose worship we had disrupted, began setting up their food alongside ours. They weren't angry. They were genuinely kind and welcoming, offering to share, despite how we had treated them. The contrast was stunning. We had shown them hostility, and they returned love. One Catholic woman, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, approached me with a plate of food and said, "Welcome to the neighborhood, dear. We're glad to have you here." The simple sincerity in her voice cracked something inside me. This was genuine love extended to people who had shown them no consideration whatsoever. My fiancée Amina whispered, "Why are they being so nice to us? Don't they realize we were blocking their church?" Her confusion mirrored my own. This wasn't how the narrative was supposed to go. We had been taught that Christians were intolerant, that they looked down on Muslims, that they would respond with hostility to any assertion of Islamic presence. As the evening progressed, some Muslims began having actual conversations with the Catholics. There was no condemnation, just human beings trying to understand each other. I heard laughter, saw genuine smiles, witnessed connections forming across the divide we had tried to create. Father Michael sat down at one of our tables without invitation. "Can I ask you something, Tariq?" he said, somehow knowing my name, though I had never properly introduced myself. "What were you hoping to accomplish tonight? Was this really about celebrating Ramadan, or was it about something else?" His question cut straight to my heart. Was this about worship or about asserting dominance? Was this about honoring Allah or proving that Muslims couldn't be pushed around? The honest answer made me deeply uncomfortable. I wanted people to see us. I admitted finally. I wanted them to know that Muslims are here and that we're not going to hide. Father Michael nodded thoughtfully. "I understand that desire. But true faith doesn't need to diminish others to prove itself. Jesus taught us to love our neighbors, even our enemies, to serve rather than demand service. That's what my congregation tried to show you tonight, not because you deserved it, but because that's what love looks like." His words hit me hard. Here was a man whose church I had disrespected, speaking to me with more kindness than I had ever heard from the Imam. There was no anger, no desire for revenge, just a genuine desire to connect and share truth. Our group cleaned up and left around 8:30 p.m., but I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. I kept replaying Father Michael helping that elderly woman, the Catholics bringing food, the genuine kindness. This wasn't what I had been taught about Christians. They were actually living out values that Islam claimed to teach. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Father Michael's words about true faith. I had spent my life measuring faith by external observance, prayers performed, verses memorized, rules followed. But these Christians had demonstrated something different. Faith measured by love, grace, and self-sacrifice. Over the next few days, I couldn't shake the encounter. I tried to pray my usual 5 daily prayers, but the words felt empty and mechanical. Amina dismissed the Catholics' kindness as weakness and insisted we had done nothing wrong. Friends at the mosque celebrated the event as a victory and couldn't understand my growing discomfort. A week later, I did something I never thought I would do. I walked into Our Lady of Angel Catholic Church on a Wednesday afternoon. I told myself I was just curious, but deep down I was searching for something I couldn't name. The interior was beautiful and peaceful in a way our mosque had never been. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass, creating patterns of colored light on the stone floor. I sat in a pew near the back, just soaking in the silence. That's when I noticed a Bible in the pew rack. I picked it up and opened it randomly to Matthew 5, the Sermon on the Mount. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. These words described exactly what I had witnessed from Father Michael and his congregation. They had been meek, merciful, and peacemakers. This was the faith demonstrated to me, completely different from the Islam I had been practicing. I continued reading, and when I reached Matthew 5:44, I felt like Jesus was speaking directly to me. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. The Catholics had loved us when we were their enemies. They had blessed us when we had disrupted their worship. And they had done this because they were imitating their Father's character. I sat in that church for over 2 hours, reading through the Gospels with tears streaming down my face. Everything I had been taught about Jesus being merely a prophet was challenged. He claimed authority to forgive sins, accepted worship, called himself the Son of God. Either he was who he claimed to be, God in human flesh, or he was a false prophet. There was no middle ground. The Jesus I was reading about was completely different from the Isa described in the Quran. The Quranic Isa was a prophet who never claimed divinity and who wasn't crucified. The biblical Jesus was God incarnate who willingly died on the cross for humanity's sins and rose from the dead. Both accounts couldn't be true. I didn't notice Father Michael had entered the church. When I looked up, he smiled and asked, "Finding what you're looking for?" "I don't understand what I witnessed last Saturday," I admitted. "We disrupted your worship and showed you no respect, but you responded with kindness. Why?" Father Michael sat next to me, because that's what Jesus commanded us to do. He told us to love our enemies, to bless those who curse us, not because they deserve it, but because that's what God did for us when He sent Jesus to die for us while we were still His enemies. "But how do you do that?" I asked desperately. "I've spent my whole life trying to be perfectly obedient to Allah, following every rule, and I'm earning favor. But you're talking about something completely different, grace that's given freely, love that doesn't have to be earned." Father Michael opened his Bible to Romans 5:8 and read, "But God demonstrates His own love for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us." He looked at me intently. "Tariq, the difference between Islam and Christianity is about how we approach God. Islam teaches that you must earn your way to paradise through good works. Christianity teaches that we can't earn our way. That's why Jesus came to bridge the gap. His death paid the price for our sins, and His resurrection proved He had conquered death. We receive salvation as a free gift through faith. But the Quran says Jesus wasn't crucified," I protested. "It says Allah made it appear that way but rescued Him. But if Jesus didn't die on the cross, then Christianity collapses." Father Michael responded patiently. "The Quran was written 600 years after Jesus by someone who wasn't there. The Gospels were written within decades of Jesus' death by eyewitnesses or those who interviewed them. We have historical records from Roman and Jewish sources confirming the crucifixion. The question is whether he rose from the dead as he predicted. Over the following weeks, I met with Father Michael multiple times. He never pressured me or made me feel judged. He simply answered my questions with patience and demonstrated through his life what it meant to follow Jesus. The transformation was gradual. The more I read the Bible, the more I saw the difference between the God revealed in Jesus Christ and the Allah I had been worshipping. Jesus offered grace, like forgiveness and relationship. Islam offered rules, judgment, and constant anxiety about never doing enough. Would you rather serve a God who demands perfect performance or a God who offers perfect love? Would you rather earn salvation through works or receive it as a free gift? That was my choice, and the answer became clear. On May 20th, 2023, 5 weeks after that Ramadan celebration, I gave my life to Jesus Christ. I met with Father Michael and told him I wanted to become a Christian and be baptized. I understood the cost. My family would disown me, my fiancé would leave me, my friends would abandon me. But I had found the truth I had been searching for my entire life. The conversation with my parents was the most painful experience of my life. I went to their house on a Thursday evening, my hands shaking as I rang the doorbell. When I told them, my father's rage was beyond anything I had witnessed. His face turned red, veins bulging in his neck as he shouted. He called me a traitor, an apostate, and told me I was dead to him. My mother wept as if I had literally died, her hands trembling as she gripped her prayer beads. She kept asking, "How could you do this to us? How could you bring this shame on our family?" The pain in her voice cut deeper than my father's anger. They gave me 24 hours to recant or be permanently cut off from the family. The next day, I had to face Amina. We met at a cafe where we had shared so many happy moments, planning our future together. When I told her about my conversion, her face transformed from confusion to disgust. She removed her engagement ring and threw it at me, the diamond catching the light as it clattered across the floor. "You have chosen to burn in hell," she said coldly, her voice shaking with barely controlled fury. "And you have brought shame on my family and yours. I will never forgive you for this." She stood up and walked out, never looking back. The mosque community's response was swift and harsh. Word spread quickly through our tight-knit community. Some of the more radical members warned that apostasy deserved death according to Islamic law, though they couldn't carry out such punishment in America. I received dozens of hateful messages calling me a traitor and promising Allah would punish me in this life and the next. People I had known my entire life turned away when they saw me on the street, refusing to acknowledge my existence. I lost my position in the family business immediately. My father restructured the company to remove me completely. The friends I had known since childhood blocked me on every platform. I was completely alone, having lost everything I had built my life around. But what I gained was worth infinitely more than what I lost. I gained a relationship with a God who loved me unconditionally. I gained peace knowing my salvation was secure through Jesus' finished work rather than my imperfect efforts. I gained a community who welcomed me despite my past. I was baptized on June 10th, 2023 in Our Lady of Angels Catholic Church. Father Michael performed the baptism with over 100 church members celebrating my new birth in Christ. As I went under the water symbolizing death to my old life and rose up symbolizing resurrection in Jesus, I felt freedom and joy I had never experienced. The Catholic community immediately stepped in to support me practically. The business owners offered me jobs. A family offered me a room in their home. Others provided groceries and friendship during the loneliest season of my life. They helped me because that's what Jesus commanded, to love their neighbor as themselves. Over the following months, I began volunteering at the church and telling my testimony. I discovered a gift for apologetics that grew out of my journey from Islam to Christianity. Father Michael encouraged me to consider theological education, and by early 2024, I had enrolled in a Catholic seminary program to study for the priesthood. The most incredible development came in August 2023 when 3 other Muslims from Bay Ridge reached out privately. They had heard about my conversion and were curious about what would make someone abandon everything for Christianity. Over coffee, I shared my testimony and answered their questions about Jesus. All 3 eventually accepted Christ and were baptized. Since then, over 30 Muslims in Brooklyn have converted to Christianity after hearing my story. Each conversion reminds me that God can use even our mistakes for His glory. I was the Muslim who organized a disruptive celebration to assert Islamic dominance. Now I'm a Christian seminarian who shares the gospel with Muslims and helps them discover the transforming power of Christ. The relationship with my biological family remains severed. My parents refuse all contact, and I haven't seen them face to face since the day they disowned me. But I've gained a new family in Christ that has embraced me completely. The Catholics I once looked down on have become my brothers and sisters. I still think about that April 15th Ramadan celebration regularly, but with completely different understanding. I thought I was demonstrating Islamic strength. Actually, I was demonstrating arrogance and insensitivity. I thought I was defending my faith. Actually, I was attacking someone else's. I thought I was serving Allah. Actually, I was serving my own pride. But God used my wrongdoing to bring me to truth. The Catholic's gracious response cracked open my heart to see the difference between religion based on works and faith based on grace. Their Christ-like love demonstrated what I had been searching for, a God who loved me not because of what I could do for Him, but simply because He made me. What is your faith built on? Is it built on your performance, your good works, your religious observance, or is it built on the finished work of Jesus Christ? Islam offers an endless pursuit of earning Allah's approval. Christianity offers a free gift of salvation through faith in Jesus. I used to pray 5 times a day facing Mecca, but I never felt heard by Allah. Now I pray constantly, speaking to Jesus as to a friend who actually listens. I used to read the Quran dutifully, but its words never brought me peace. Now I read the Bible daily, finding comfort in promises of grace. I used to fast and perform rituals to earn spiritual merit. Now I serve out of gratitude for what Jesus has already done. The Muslim man who organized that Ramadan celebration no longer exists. In his place stands a man transformed by Jesus Christ, training to serve as a priest in the same church he once disrespected. If God can transform someone like me, He can absolutely transform you. Jesus is calling you right now, just as He called me through the gracious response of Father Michael and his congregation. He's not asking you to earn your way to Him. He's offering Himself to you as a free gift, purchased by His blood on the cross and guaranteed by His resurrection. All you have to do is accept His gift and surrender your life to Him. Don't wait for miraculous signs. Jesus revealed Himself to me through the simple kindness of Christians living out their faith. He's revealing Himself to you right now through this testimony. The question is whether you will respond to His call or continue pursuing a religious system that can never give you certainty of salvation or peace with God. The Jesus who turned my hatred into love, my pride into humility, and my religious performance into grateful service is ready to do the same for you, will you let him change everything about your life the way he changed everything about mine?